Chris Wright, our CTO and co-founder, is going to lead the panel and ask the questions, and
Cool. Do you want to come up?
Yeah, let's do it. Cool.
So we thought it would be really interesting to kind of finish off from the other perspective. So we've heard a lot about from the game side and on how ads are being used in games. We brought together not quite the right order, but it doesn't really matter. Three ad networks. So I think Unity Ads, AdColony, LoopMe. So actually, if we could just a quick minute on each of you, just to kind of quickly introduce yourself, that would be great. And then we've got some questions. I'd really like to get. We're only going to do 20 minutes because pizza's coming soon. But I'd really like to get questions from the floor as well. But there's some. We'll kick off with some questions, and then please put your hand up if you've got questions, and we can get some interesting kind of feedback. So, Fernando, do you want to kick off?
Sure. So I'm the guy in the middle there, Fernando. I work at AdColony. I'm working on the publisher growth team. So I'm helping essentially developers to get the most out of our network, to get the most value from our advertisers.
Cool. Helene?
Hi, I'm Helene. I've been working at LoopMe for 3 years. If you don't know LoopMe, we're a 5-year business. Our heritage is to run cost per install campaigns for the likes of Social Points and Supercell. And after 2 years, we diverted the business to do more branding activities for brands direct and agencies.
Cool. That leaves me then. So I'm Marc on the left, work for Unity Ads. I head up the existing business team, so that covers monetization and UA.
Brilliant. Cool. So just to kind of kick off, we've talked about, or we've heard quite a lot about how ads can or don't necessarily cannibalize IAP and retention, and I think that seems to be quite a strong feedback. Though actually, when you start to look, when you start talking to people, I think there's still that big fear that that ads do cannibalize and they can affect. So, do you want to kind of give some thoughts on, from your side, from the ad network side, on cannibalization of both IAP and effects on retention?
Sure. Shall I jump in?
Yeah, go on, Marc.
Cool. Start us off, but then we'll kind of rotate, I guess. Yeah, so I think we've covered this topic pretty well tonight in bits and pieces. So I think Sharon gave some really good points about looking at data. And I think when you look at cannibalization of IAP, of course, if you do anything badly, it's not going to end well. So if you give away free money, you devalue money. So when you look at implementing ad implementation, you could give away a lot of value. And of course, you're going to see your IAP revenue drop, because if you can do it for 30-second video, why are you going to spend actual money? So I think it's important to actually test and look at the data and play with those values and what you're giving away in exchange for that user's time, and finding the sweet spot. So like you say, if you're aiming for, I think our network stats is about 1.2 ads per user per day as an average. So if you look at that, that's kind of what you want to be going for, and you want to find enough of a reward to get that 1.2 from your audience, but not too much so that they will watch it all day long and kind of farm the rewards. So I think that's the first important part, and I'll stop my comment there.
I think we have to remember that when it comes to advertising, you're talking about a transaction, and I think it's quite clear in the minds of the users that of the nature of the transaction. You're sitting watching TV, you know that an ad's going to come on, so you understand that, okay, well, I'm giving my time now so I can get some entertainment. And I think that also transfers to mobile games. You're playing a game probably for free, and you still have given a chance to actually contribute to the monetization. And I think it's actually much clearer in users' minds than we think. We tend to think that users find ads intrusive, or that they actually don't contribute to the whole game experience. But as the numbers today kind of showed, is kind of the opposite. They actually appreciate a lot of that.
I think you're right. I think users accepted the fact that we as marketers, marketing professionals, we transferred we replicated the model of the television model, the TV ads into desktop and mobile now. So I think users are used to being exposed to ads. I think it's more like how, as we discussed with Chris previously, it's more how brands that are non-gaming brands, how do they perceive and how do they enter more and more this kind of environments. And that's, I think, the challenge for for gaming apps and also the challenge for brands. Educate them that it's the right environment.
So that kind of, I mean, that great, going to brands is obviously a really interesting phase in this. I mean, I think we're all used to seeing game on game, performance ads, and games being promoted within other games. And there's positives and negatives there, because it's an obvious, you've got an audience there, and so they're wanting to play other games, but it also can potentially, you're driving people to potentially your competitor games. With brands, that seems like a really good experience, because you're starting to promote brands, and therefore there's that seems like a positive direction. So it'd be really interesting to hear your views. I mean, obviously, LoopMe is very much a branded network. AdColony and Unity are more performance focused. But it'd be really interesting to see where you think that's coming from, where the split is. Is it going to become more branded? Is there more opportunity? And what is the effect of brands, both on CPM and on the various kind of KPIs? So,
yeah, I think that's a very good question. And as a publisher, as a game developer, you have to think how much money you make from, what's your effective CPM. And sometimes we find it really challenging when I go and buy inventory. What is challenging for me is that brands are not prepared to pay the such high CPM that you guys manage to drive. So if we're talking about games like EA games or Gameloft, they're quite premium games. They know they can get away with CPMs of 20 plus, but this is not the type of price that brands would necessarily pay. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done with brands, but ultimately, if you look at the brand perspective, they're not getting. If you're an app, right? So I'm advertising. I have the goal to generate an install, and I have a performance. I have a metric at the end of it. So that brings you a high eCPM. Fine. But as a brand, what you're doing is you're buying exposure, and that's it. There's no kind of deeper measurement into if this ad actually converted to an actual sale online or in store. So I think that's why I think the pricing should be slightly different if you're an in-app, a gaming advertiser with an aim to generate an install, or if you are a brand that just want to advertise a drink or a product.
So you'd expect a lower CPM?
Yeah.
Because the goal is different.
The goal is different.
Yeah.
Well, we do actually have quite a lot of brand, and things have been changing quite a lot since we have. Actually, Jamie had a slide here about brand safety and brand safety environments. And that's top of the agenda for brand agencies and for marketers generally. And what's happening now is that they're starting to wake up to the fact that your app, your games are actually curated environments. They are safe, brand safe environments for the most part, right? So you can actually display really, all kinds of brands, and you can actually have a safe environment by advertising in app or in game.
And how are you doing the brand safe? How are you managing?
Well, so what I'm saying is that the app is a brand safe environment. Okay. So for the advertiser,
as a general experience.
Exactly. I mean, the first thing you saw when there was the story of YouTube, and I think there was a couple of other networks, platforms that the kind of funding, Taro or some other things. It was that all the brands just pulled their money straight away from them, because they don't want to be associated with those environments, with those kind of videos. What happens in your games is that you have a completely curated content. You know exactly what's going to happen, and the App Store and the Play Store, they completely review it, so it's safe. They know it's safe, and now they're starting to wake up to this fact. There is a lot of education, as Helene said. I think it's a really long road, but I think that's something that we need to keep reminding brands.
And are brands becoming more accepting of games as a medium for showing brands? Marc, what do you think?
I think building on that actually is that so I used to work at AOL before I worked at Unity, so I'm kind of very focused on brands in the past. There is still this transition going on. Brands in the scheme of things are relatively nascent. So they're looking at eyeballs, they're looking at quartile completion, so who completes 25, 50, 75, 100% of the ad. And now they're looking at viewability. So slowly there is this education going on. Brands are more and more buying from us, as they are AdColony, everyone in the market, for game experiences. But at the moment, the reality is a lot of it does come from performance, and it's very much down to the opportunity cost. Because for you, the worry is churn. But obviously from the person buying, it's a relevant audience. If you want to buy a resource management game, of course you're going to see good value buying customers from other games. But your job is to look at what is the cost of dividing that user's attention or actually losing, say, 8% of people at day 7, does the value from ads offset that loss? So I think slowly and slowly brands will be a bigger percentage. At the moment, performance is really the backbone. To go with 100% brand strategy, if you're Gameloft, it's achievable to get like a double-digit percentages of fill from brand ads. If you're like a 20-person studio, performance is really where the money's coming from. So it's not a case of whether you want to do like brand versus performance, it's whether you want to do advertising or not at the moment, pretty much.
Has anybody got any questions? Yes.
So competitive games like Clash Royale, for example, they don't have any. And however, there are some Asian games coming out of Asia that have got streaming in the games. So having some kind of television experience where the streaming is interrupted, like on Twitch with advertising, do you see that coming into games potentially? In the client, that is, rather than on a platform like Twitch.
I think that could be interesting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure brands would bite into this type of.
There's a challenge there because especially so brands might not bite it, but also when it comes to performance, you're trying to drive an action, you try to drive installs. So how do you do that if it's just streaming and the video dissipates? Yes, it can raise awareness for your brand, for your app, but ultimately you want them to click that install button, you want to track the install button, and you want to make sure that you know who the user is and so on. So it is a challenge we tried for many years, and is not a massive part of our business, and it's just because of that challenge, really.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at Alphabet, so like if you look at Google specifically and their main product for advertising being YouTube for video ads, a lot of advertising companies are in the business of getting in the way of people that want to do something and distracting them from what they're trying to do. There is some value in that for brand exposure, but it's kind of not the experience you want. When you compare it to a rewarded video, you're very much looking at it from a sense of how do we get that user to somewhere that we want them to go by using advertising as the vehicle. So interrupting people, it will make money. Will it affect retention? Probably more so. It's that push and pull. Like if you're pushing the ads on people, you're probably going to see those metrics don't balance out. And then it's hard to track the brand value from that. Because like you've got a video view, and then what does that lead to? Whereas if a user chooses to watch it, you've got their probably not necessarily their attention more so, but they're more comfortable with the experience because they had a choice in the equation.
And do you see, a lot have been talking about rewarded video as being very successful and it's cool. Do you think that's the ultimate end to this, or is there other things that are going to come to make brands and ads more integrated within the game experience, part of the overall experience of the game, or do you see that kind of rewarded as being that kind of endpoint?
I think there's a lot to do with rewarded video already. In a way, developers can get really creative. I know quite a few developers here, and they've gotten really creative with it. So I can't think right now what the next step is. The changes that I see in the industry, particularly with regards to rewarded video or just video advertising in general, is more related to how we do things on the back end. How do the bidding, just to be more efficient.
More relevant?
More relevant,
better targeting, finding
the
best users, exposing the ads to the most relevant users.
Yeah. And fighting for that one impression. Really getting that price down to the publisher.
Yeah. Sorry.
Again, question.
Just when you talk about the value proposition to brands, do you compare it with magazines? Because for a magazine, right, you've got the number of people who might buy it, plus the people, your subscribers, who definitely will buy it. But then, my experience in magazines, I used to read GQ, and the first 20 pages of that magazine, I could do that, click past it, and then go to the content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're expensive ads, they pay for those. So why, if that's all about exposure, but you cannot guarantee, you can't track me from that magazine to the shop to buying some, I don't know, Lacoste, whatever it is. I don't even remember the name. So why is it so difficult in a video ad? So for us, we're okay, I've got 100,000 users, who will see the ad, you can't track the sales. So why is it so hard?
So it is easier as an industry to, track digital, so desktop and mobile than print or radio for sure, or television, because it's all based on, television is based on panel, magazine is probably based also like on number of subscribers, as you said, but you're not guaranteed that people see the ad. I think what it is with gaming, I'm not going to make friends here, but clearly I think it's, that coming from AOL and coming from the brand side, it's an education process, and working with media agencies, educating them and showing them that people spend time on mobile, and what do they do on mobile? You have all the utility apps, but most of the time people play games, and that's where they need to be. And I think it's a big, massive education process. When we talk to brands direct, we have a massive campaign running at the moment for LG. They advertise their television. We have the relationship with the client direct based in Korea. There's a lot you can do in once you have the relationship direct with the client, they're more open, they open to idea, we can test things. With media agencies and still there's lots of very conservative brands out there. It's all about education and showing them what I like about when we work with publishers or gaming publishers. I like to have a portfolio of their games so I can present that to my clients. Mm-hmm. And just show them how relevant this is for their brand. We like statistics on the audience. This is something that big companies like Gameloft and EA have. They have nice portfolio that you can send to clients to say, hey guys, this is the type of games that we have on board our network. Look how relevant this is to your audience. And if you want, you can even cherry pick. We can create inventory lists internally and only deliver on certain apps, certain gaming apps.
So a lot of this is about educating the brands in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a little funny nugget, and we often get requests from the media agencies that we work with to say, okay, these are the kind of sites that I want to advertise in, and these are the ones that I don't want to advertise in. And the sites are like, okay, gambling, I don't want to advertise in, games, I don't want to advertise in. So there's no even mid-core or casual games, just no games at all.
And they don't differentiate within games. You have so different levels of casual games versus core games, and then within casual games there's different type adventure strategy. There's so many games, and everyone from student to CIO, CTO, CEOs are also playing games. It's hard like selling.
Do you find that any particular brand sectors are easier to sell games advertising into? And that's part A of the question. Part B is I work in the sports industry. I'm making a sports game. How do you find sports companies, brands into games?
So I think from our first-hand experience of working with brands, media agencies, programmatically with exchanges, is of course you're always going to see spend relative to that industry size. So that FMCG is kind of up there. But when we look at what intersects with mobile and gaming quite well, it's about movies, entertainment resonates really well because it's people that play games watch. It's synonymous. There's no differentiation. It's kind of real content. 90% of people probably watch some form of content or play content on a daily basis. So entertainment and gaming go together really well. We did a VR exposure thing for the new Saw film. So AR ads, VR ads, so a little bit out there and in the future. But they were totally interested in the Unity proposition because of the strong gaming dominance that we have. So I would say that's a big one for us. Automotive is pretty big, and FMCG are the main ones. And then your second question was about sport.
Just about sports specifically. How do you find that sports brands buy
sports as a support or sport content ads, sports ads?
Sports brands just buying into games.
Yeah, so the likes of Adidas, Foot Locker. Those guys love this kind of environment.
Well, they've been campaigning a lot over the last couple of years. If you've seen a lot of the adverts focusing on women in sports, there's been this big push from Nike, Adidas, Reebok. So there's been a lot of consumption. We haven't really focused on sports as a bracket, but that has grown pretty organically. And it's about the everyday person. It's about everyone. So sports brands are pretty synonymous with kind of culture at the moment because people like to play games, stay in shape. It's kind of quite mass appeal.
When you mentioned earlier FMCG, and within that there's so many brands, and again, there are some big companies like Unilever, they're kind of a bit sensitive, like where they would place their ads. Again, they would like select, but again, at the end of the day, when they have metrics such as, they're very specific with what they want. They want to target women of a certain age group. They want high viewability. They want, they have like moat as viewability metrics. So all those like metrics together is like, you can't be serious. You can't be working on a site list. You have to open up to all and let the ad delivers in games and see which of those games deliver the best performance.
It's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, and then you say the biggest category on mobile is social, mainly driven by Facebook and Twitter, etc. Outside of that is gaming, but you're saying no to gaming, and obviously social is completely privatized.
Yeah.
So you're saying I want all of these things and not gaming and social.
Yeah, and apart from knowing, okay, this app is more sort of male-oriented, this app's more female skewed, we don't have that kind of data, right? At least, most developers don't pass that kind of data to the network, so we can't actually form these audiences in order to package them and give them to the advertisers.
They do, or they don't, sorry.
They don't.
Oh, they do. They don't.
Well, if it's a female of 55 years, it's not like
most...
Facebook or my like.
I think that the difference here is from like a scaled SDK network working with developers. We have like so many games, and games is kind of diverse. We're not doing manual media buys. We're powered by machine learning. We have like thousands of campaigns running. It's just so hard to really group that together. I think when you work very closely with media agencies and buyers for specific briefs and buying on specific publishers and really old school like signing stuff, it becomes a lot easier to find those audiences. Because that if you go to the Men's Health website and speak to Hearst, you're buying 18 to 34-year-old males predominantly that are interested in Breitling watches and sports. It's kind of like very straightforward.
I think we've probably got one more question before we wrap up, but the guys will be here obviously afterwards. Anybody got a last question? No? Okay, well I think we'll just start with that, that'd be great. All of you, go ahead, please.
So you guys mentioned the ads and AOR ads a little bit, and one of the things I've noticed in some of the slides has been native ads showing up as performing generally well, but not having a particularly high uptake in terms of existing in games. And kind of anecdotally, I know about 2 years ago, native ads were things that were getting talked about a lot, and I saw some really good performances in games that I was working on that we integrated them, but they don't seem to have really taken off. What is your feeling on native ads? Is it still on its way up, or has it just kind of died on its feet? What's the kind of vibe there?
So, sorry, I didn't look at anyone before I spoke, but I was in charge of native ads when I was at AOL. As you say, there was this big hype about, native, it's the next big thing. It's like banners, but better because you can kind of control stuff. I think there are a current of inherent problems to native. So how do you make it scalable? So to make it scalable, you define a standard. So the MRC did that with the IAB and made like a specification for what component should be in a native ad. So that solved that problem. But then it's kind of complicated, because what does a native ad look like? Well, it looks like whatever the developer wants it to look like. It's styled with their text, it's coloured with their colours, it's kind of the size that they want it to be. And there's all these complications with like understanding what that looks like to the end consumer. So I think the biggest struggle we had was actually getting people to understand it. I'm sure that's changed a little bit because it's been 2 years since I was really focused on it, but it's hard to really, like, what is a native ad? I could get everyone to draw a picture in this room and it would be totally different. So getting advertisers advertisers aren't stupid, of course, but getting them to understand what that looks like is kind of hard. A video is very straightforward, TV, print's very straightforward, you can do what you want on the page. Banners, you're dealing with size constraints, but when you give someone complete flexibility over that format, scale and size, it's kind of, mentally it becomes quite difficult to productize that, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, native video ads, as you said 2 years ago, there was massive, like, wow, this is going to go like, crazy. And actually, unless you sell it as long, unless you sell it on a CPCV model where you guarantee a video view, that's not going to give brands any return in terms of viewable, like high video completion rates. So in that sense, doesn't bring much. There's tons of volume of native video. I think a lot is unsold.
Well, Cheetah Mobile is a good example.
Cheetah
of that
Mobile
one.
is a good example, and I don't even think it performs well. We've tried native video on many publishers, Iris, and many CPI campaigns on native placement. It never converts. I mean, that's my experience.
No, it's the same. And on the other hand, you have rewarded video or just full screen video, which kind of is a one-size-fits-all really solution for monetization. So I guess what Marc sort of he wrapped up quite nicely was that it's just an easier solution to go with video ads or whatever other formats you want to choose from than sort of to customize for each and every app. I think that's probably it.
Well, I think that's the thing we like. Obviously, we sell stuff, so it's slightly biased, but we talk about video like it's native. You talk about customizing the way in and you customize the way out. So the user flow in and the reward on the back end. I think it's a lot easier to scale that as a native solution than kind of these pie in the sky, either OpenRTB native or kind of 3D rendered native and product placement, which is obviously we've got an engine, so it's stuff we thought about, but it's just so complicated to do at scale.
Brilliant, cool. I think we'll have to stop there, but as I said, the guys will be here for a while once we get some pizza. So yeah, thank you.